Welcome back, roster the people. Summertime edition, 32 teams in 32 days. It's funny because for the longest time, this show has been the punchline of us doing these because we get to the end and it's like, Washington, woo! Except this year, it's actually not a joke. It's not a joke.
Washington.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Jason Draven, Mason Cameron, Neil Smith. This is your fantasy football draft primer for 2024. You will hear us reference all kinds of ADPs and rankings. Those come courtesy of our friends at Fantasy Pros. Jason and I are part of the Fantasy Pros ECR. Our rankings get slushed in. So if anything that we say sounds dramatically different, we will call out our own rankings. If we have something to say, we will say it. This is all based around 12-team PPR redraft format. God's format, just for Mason. That's what it is. We got the cat. We got cat engagement. We got it all, baby. It's all here. Like, we got it all. It's all here for you. We got Austin Eckler for Jason. It's all culminating into one big greatest hits album. It's pretty incredible. So with that, today is the 22nd of August. We are right there. It's week 3 of the preseason. We will be recording the wrap-up show on the 28th of August. It will go live for you on the 31st of August, just in time in the morning for you to have coffee and get updated on all the fun takes before you have to draft. So be prepared for that. We will also do a special on that about a new sleeper change. So if you play on Sleeper, you might want to tune in for this because Sleeper very quietly has introduced some new features that we don't really have a convenient way to do this. So we're going to tag it to the wrap-up show. Tune in for that. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. It's also a really good reason to move to Sleeper. I will point out, Sleeper, not a sponsor, just people we think are cool. So
I mean, we'd like a sponsor. So if you want to be, I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah,
hit me up.
Our lawyer is available.
What? Yeah, he's available. He's there. He's on
He wants to get
standby.
paid. I understand.
Yeah. So that's where we are. So no, we would love it. We would be very happy to get involved in that.
Awesome.
So there you go. There's your PSAs. Once more, we will go through this, and this one's actually going to be interesting. Like I was teasing, it's not a joke team anymore. It's like a real team that's trying to do real team things. Don't love the fact that, well, I will say this. It's no longer Ron Rivera. So I'm free. And then they hired Cliff Kingsbury, and I'm right back in jail. And it's like, I just can't win. Longtime listeners and viewers will know that I don't like Ron Rivera. Not interpersonally, just for fantasy purposes, because he makes my life very hard. And what's funny is I actually don't have a problem with Cliff Kingsbury for fantasy purposes, but for real football purposes, it's maddening. It's just maddening to watch it. So you can't win. You can't win here. So new coach. Also,
New
quarterback. Yeah, new quarterback. Jayden Daniels. I'm going to just do this quickly, and then I'm going to go right to Mason. Jayden Daniels opens as the QB 12, 103 overall by ADP. Mason, what do you like about Jayden Daniels?
Man,
cheaper.
So this is one of the things. This is why you bring on myself and Jason, because I'm gonna prop up Jayden Daniels so high that anybody watching this show is literally gonna be like, I'm taking him first 3 rounds. Jason's gonna tell you where to take him in your drafts. So just bear with us for a second.
First 3, no.
Where I paint this picture. So Jayden Daniels was one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in the pre-draft process. Colleague of mine, Dalton Wasserman over at PFF, it was his favorite quarterback of the class. We talked about him a lot when we were in Cincy for PFF covering the draft. It was an awesome time. What we love seeing in a guy like Jayden Daniels is his ability to throw any throw. His arm talent. Now, I got in a little bit of trouble in the pre-draft process because I loved his ability to kind of make any throw. He's got that arm that doesn't pop off the tape in terms of velocity, but he is the guy that can make every single throw with a flick. And it's different when you see those guys that can hit that throw with the flick. It's like the Rodgers flick where they can just make it happen. And that's what I see when I watch Jayden Daniels play. Throws with timing. And you especially see it on deep balls. When I was looking through a lot of the data from the draft class and the pre-draft process, he was so good in these deep passes. He graded out obscenely, like 90 plus on the grading scale. It was huge. Now, his rushing floor is obviously what's really propping up his draft stock here to be such a high number. Now, in the preseason, we haven't really seen Washington use him the same way LSU did. They really did a lot of the read game. And when you kind of watch him at the pro level, I don't know that his speed really pops off the tape where if I'm their coordinator, that I would be putting him into that position. Now, I think that he is still going to have a rushing floor. I'm just not sure that it's in the same area that his draft stock is being priced right now. But frankly, from a absolutely throwing the ball standpoint, I think he is going to be the answer for this team. I'm really high on him, and I think they're going to be better because of him. Now, it's going to take some time for everything to develop. This is a new offense. This is a new scheme, new head coach, new ownership, new everything. Like, they're building something new here, and it's going to take time, but I think they have the pieces in place to do it. Now, is that a question to what you're going to need in fantasy drafts this year? I don't know. Jason can probably tell us more in that regard, but I'm higher on Washington. They're not going to be a bottom feeder anymore. Now, they have some stuff to build, but they're getting there.
Yeah, so we're talking about my QB7.
Okay.
Woo!
So with that in mind, I mean,
Spicy.
last year, Sam Howell. You compare him to Sam Howell. Last year, Sam Howell, QB12. Who's the better prospect here? Let's be honest. And that was with
the most rickety QB12 possible. And I love Sam Howell, but that's
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
that's
he was only
sketchy.
He was only that high because defenders dropped the interceptions he threw to them.
Volume. It has to do with that too. When you throw it on every play. Although that being said,
again,
what does
he
Cliff
also
Kingsbury
had
like to do?
263 rushing yards. And I think
Yeah,
that
he did.
Daniels is going to be higher than that. Like, these are two areas that
That's a lot.
you say that, but
250? 250 is a lot.
Is it though?
Yeah.
So if you're comparing to his comparison, if you go to player profile, you're looking at Lamar Jackson as his comparable player. I'm just letting you know.
I think player profile might need to.
I understand
down a little bit over there.
That's a tall task.
Like,
I understand. He had 1,250 on the ground last year at LSU.
Okay.
Like it.
Different system, different game, but okay.
He had 120 attempts last year.
Yeah, that would help.
Have 20. Yeah,
that would help. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have anywhere near that.
Yeah.
No, but again, I have him closer to, I'm going to say 400, which is, again, pretty conservative for rushing QBs or Konami code QBs. Looking at all the other guys, which is also why he's just outside of there. But like Mason said, he throw it. Like it, you have somebody who, Sam Howell last year we saw, kind of struggled. But the weapons haven't really changed. They've also added a couple players that I really like that we'll talk about later, but it's just he has all this talent around him. They are clearly building around him. They picked him at second. They got rid of the old QB that was there, and they're rolling him out there. And they clearly believe in him. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to bet on that and get him a better O-line, continue to grow that team and offense. And this is a historically good team. It hasn't been recently, but overall it's been a decent team. So it has a big history there that they're living up to. It's just the fact that Daniels is such an athletic freak. Like you saw what, I'm not going to compare the two because I think Daniels is actually a better thrower, but Anthony Richardson last year and how his arm talent is insane. Well, difference is Daniels doesn't explode like that, but his throws look so much better.
Yeah.
So
they're like a difference in body type in a way. Like Anthony Richardson is this like explosive athlete that could, debatably have gotten drafted in the NBA potentially too. Like just like an incredible athlete. But I do agree. You do see a lot of the same strokes in terms of like where I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think you have a similar type of quarterback where this dual threat ability is becoming more and more in vogue. This Konami code quarterback who can run and pass, and you're kind of looking at like just slightly different builds in the character creator when they took them. Jayden Daniels flicks that ball a little bit more. He's going to be a little bit more prone to that passing, but also like you said, super athletic. He's going to be able to get those rushing yards. And it's just a little bit different where, Anthony Richard, who still is a good passer, who we're hoping can get some cohesion with his offense and kind of make strides. That's another conversation for a different show. But what we do see is they're not too far from each other, which is why they've had these huge projected ceilings, because they can reach them. It's just, can they put it all together?
Right. So you're talking about, in reality here, what is a 9th round pick? That's what it is. So weirdly, this is actually one of the players that's kind of been falling onto my radar, because that's when I start looking historically for quarterback. Because if you could get a quarterback, this is the old Jalen Hurts argument from years ago that I'm dusting off here. So we're dusting off an argument from about 3-4 years ago. But if you go back, you can hear me make this argument again with a different background. It was the old Jalen Hurts argument in year 2, when he was like a 9th, 10th round pick, because he was undrafted his rookie year in fantasy. But we saw a little bit of it towards the end of the year, and that made him a draftable commodity. It's kind of what this is. Because the argument works like this. Any quarterback with a rushing floor that you can get in the 9th, 10th round, you should just take. That's very simple, right? I don't know that I could reduce it down any more than that. And the reason being is because anybody who's got a rushing floor like that could theoretically not just get into the top 12, but they can get into the top 5. And that's the upside that you're talking about here. Here's the risk. You're playing with the unknown. But that's the thing. That's the only reason you're even having this conversation with him being down this far.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, he's not
he is
exactly
my rejection.
He's not
going to
exactly
top five
my
next
cup of tea, and I'm not projecting him to go at QB 7. This is a recommend for me, because he has to be, by
Good value.
virtue of how the game works. You can't not recommend this. It's just no 2 things. You're playing with the unknown, but that's the only reason you're even getting this opportunity. So that's baked in. And then the other thing is, I hate Cliff Kingsbury. Bear said it. Just know that both of those 2 things. Just know it, because this has the potential to be deeply frustrating based on the Kingsbury offense and some of the other stuff that we're going to get into with the weirdness around the weapons. Because we're going to start going through the weapons here in a second, and just know that there's a potential for some weirdness. However, all the upside in the world. All the upside in the world is yours for the taking here. This is the pick for people that do not wear their khaki pants and pull it up to their chest. And this is for people that wear the Joe Namath. They got the Joe Namath slingshot briefs. Google it if you're under 40. Google it. Look it up. I'm not making that up. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. I didn't invent that. I'm not clever enough to invent that. You got to look that up. While you're there, if you're Googling Joe Namath thing, Google Joe Namath on ESPN, and then figure out why Joe Namath's not allowed on TV anymore. Google that too if you need to laugh. Google that too. I'm not sponsored by these people. I don't care. I'll say what I want. Like I'll say what I need to. But yeah, just know that that's the reason. The reason that this is happening the way that it is that you have a team that has struggled for the last several years, that has questions with the weapons, that has a questionable head coach, that has a rookie that we haven't seen before. But there is all the upside is here for you. And that's the reason why that you're getting this opportunity. Because I will tell you right now, next year, if this works, he's going to be up there in the Anthony Richardson 4th round pick nonsense factory.
Yeah,
that's where that's going to be.
Going right now from last year. If you were picking Anthony Richardson last year, that's where Daniels is right now.
Right. And Anthony Richardson was similar to this last year, actually. It's just that he got hurt 2 games into the season, and it really screwed you. But you have no control over that. No one has any control over that. You can't live like that. That doesn't work that way. If you're going to live like that, you're going to be sad. Or you're going to roster a lot of safer players. But if you want this is like your one shot. to get him as a 9th round pick. Because if this pans out, he's a 4th round pick next year, and that's minimum. And if it flames out, get him for nothing next year. He'll be down with he'll be down with the dregs next year. So that's why you're seeing what you're seeing from a fantasy perspective. And what's annoying to me is I can point out all the negative markers in the world, and yet I still have to sit here and recommend it to you. I have to. I don't have a choice. I am committed to this because of the virtue of the fact that even though I don't think he's going to be the Lamar Jackson, that's scary. Yeah, but I don't need him to be in the 10th round or 9th round, excuse me. I don't need him to be in the 9th round. I just need him to be effective. But there's a lot of upside baked into this. So I'm going to have to recommend it to you. This is one that I have circled for myself. Where it's like, if I can get him in the 9th round, I'm gonna. Because if you go start looking at who's available in the 10th, 11th round, where I would prefer it, you're not talking about the same caliber of player. You're just not. No one in that round will have the same rushing upside that this individual will have. So even though it's a little scary, from Mason's point, the real football skills are there on display. And to Jason's point, the rushing floor is there for you. So by virtue of that, I have to recommend it in the 9th round. You have to be willing to do this if you're thinking you're going to play this game. You have to. So that's what it is. It is what it is at this point. I don't really want to spend any more time on it. Let's talk about running back. Let's talk about one of Jason's favorite players. Austin Eckler. No longer with the Chargers. Not there to get kicked around anymore. In the words of Jamal Williams, they didn't want me, and I got a new girlfriend, and she feeding me, and I'm eating good, and that's what it is. So there you go. You got Austin Eckler on this team. Really frustrating for fans of the other guy, Brian Robinson, because Brian Robinson has never done nothing to nobody except try and be the best Brian Robinson that he could be, and yet they keep adding bodies. It's so annoying. So Austin Eckler opens as and I'm doing this in tandem because I don't think you can talk about this without it being a joint operation.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler opens as the RB31, ADP 85. Brian Robinson opens as the RB33, ADP 92. Guess what? No one knows. So frustrating. It's so frustrating.
And that's just a great point, Neil. So truth be told, you guys, on our note sheet, we share a note sheet here, and I tend to put my notes into it. And I don't have any notes here because I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys. Because frankly, when I look at it, like Neil just alluded to, I'm not quite sure why they keep adding backs to this backfield. Because I think Brian Robinson had more than proved that he's a very efficient back. He can continue to hold the workload.
He proved he was a better pass catcher than anybody thought possible last year.
So I'm just not quite sure why they keep adding backs to the mix. And while Austin Eckler has been a good back in his career, I think there are some questions about what he can regain in this new environment. But those aren't questions that you have with Brian Robinson right now.
No.
So my suggestion would be, if you do find yourself in need of a back around here and you're questioning who you're going to grab, I would probably lean towards Robinson. But again, I don't know, because I don't know why they keep bringing in players. So frankly, it's kind of a wait and see for me. But maybe Jason will have some more insight into yeah, I didn't think so either, but you know what I mean? So
I mean, I'm a huge Austin Eckler guy. This is not a good spot for Austin Eckler to be in. This man was shot and is still running better than Antonio Gibson, which is kind of the role that Austin Eckler is coming into. Brian Robinson did it. Like, dude's a freak. And I don't know why there's so much hate around him. At this price, if you're looking at these two, it's Brian Robinson, and it's not particularly close. I expect him to carry this whole backfield without any issue. I mean, we saw Austin Eckler get beat up last year. And so I think that's part of the reason he wanted to get out of there, is because he can't handle the full workload. I think
it's also because they literally had no money to pay him.
Well,
the Chargers cap situation was.
But even if they did, I don't think they would have.
It. Like, They didn't have the money for that, and even if they did have the money, I don't think they were going to get.
They had to cut. They had to cut so much.
Keenan Allen had to go. Mike Williams had to go.
So
Half the defense had to go. Austin Eckler had to go.
To even get into zero on the cap scale, like to get out of negative, they had to cut all of those players. Like they still, by the time the draft and free agency and stuff rolled around, they did not have a ton of money to expend.
They didn't even have the money to sign their rookies.
Yeah. So.
They had to literally keep cutting until that's that team right now. But this is not the Chargers show. I'm right there with you, Jason, on this. This might be the most frustrating backfield in fantasy. And I use that word very deliberately because it's not the worst backfield in fantasy. It's the most frustrating for fantasy. Because when I saw that it was just going to be Brian Robinson before the Eckler news, I was fist pumping. Because I was like, thank you. Free Brian Robinson. Free him. What else can the man do? He was shot through the knee and came back and played at an incredibly high level. He beat the crap out of the man who shot him and tried to carjack him with a bullet in his knee. I have zero question.
Superhero. He's literally so like his 30 for 30 is going to be so.
I can't wait. Because like they tried to carjack him. He said no. They shot him in the knee, and he beat the crap out of that man and waited for the police to arrive. And they arrested the guy who tried to carjack him. And I'm like, are you Wolverine? Like, are you like, wait, if you shot me through the knee, I'd be like on the ground, like, oh God, take the car. Like, yeah, like all you don't even have to shoot me through the knee. You just have to wave the gun at me, and I'd be like, take the car.
Not to mention, he does all that, and he can pass block. So, like, what do you want? He's everything.
I don't understand why we needed to add aging veterans to this room. Like, it's fine. And I don't even hate I like Austin Eckler a lot. He's been great for a long time. He's been a perennial favorite of this show. But why are we doing this? Person. Yeah, he's a likable guy, too, on the side. Like, he's a nice guy. I'm glad he got another contract because he didn't deserve what was about to happen to him. Like, but I don't get this. And so I'm very much in on Brian Robinson for redraft. Also, just today, the report out of camp, they asked Cliff Kingsbury point blank who the RB1 is on the team. And I'm going to go get the exact quote here. So talk amongst yourselves while I go do it. But I got a spoiler for you. It wasn't about Austin Eckler. Okay? Like, that was the maddening thing about this, is that even Kingsbury, who ostensibly was responsible for bringing Austin Eckler here, is saying, oh, no, it's Brian Robinson is my RB1. And I'm like, I hate you, Cliff.
Here you go.
I don't understand you. You frustrate me deeply. Like,
there we go. Austin Eckler has been fantastic. I think there's a narrative out there that maybe he lost a step or something was off. And that couldn't be further from the truth from what I've seen. Brian Robinson, he's number one back in the league. There's no doubt.
Right.
Oh, so he's delusional.
Right. Exactly. That's been my point for a long
Kingsbury.
time. That's been my point for a long time about Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. I like Brian Robinson as much as the next guy, but I have eyes also.
Yeah, I'm not totally delusional. So it's like Brian Robinson is not the number one running back in the league. However, he should be the number one running back for this team. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. And I think anyone who tells you they do is lying to you, including Cliff Kingsbury, by the way. like anybody who's telling you that they know is lying. So for me, I would rather just roster Brian Robinson at 92, hope he falls because your draft goes sideways, and I'm just going to ride out with that. The argument to be made is the argument with Austin Eckler because it's PPR, and you're hoping that he doesn't get his knee whacked on the first series of the season like he did last year, and then be gimpy the rest of the year. Because there is a world where Austin Eckler has value. But then I want to talk to Mason about how real football works and about the narrative about rushing quarterbacks can't support running backs for fantasy because they don't throw checkdowns to them because they run the zone. Because I've heard that too about Austin Eckler as it relates to fantasy. So what do you think about that lovely nugget?
I think good schemes can work out. The issue always, though, is especially with receiving backs, is you have to understand from a play caller standpoint, if I'm on 3rd and long, 3rd and 7, 8 plus. I don't so much want my check down. I'm going to scheme up something that's going to get me the yardage I need. And that's where some of these things come into play, where guys like Brian Robinson, who block better than guys like Austin Eckler, where Austin Eckler is what you would, traditionally assume as a receiving back, given his size and his, track record and his history. He very much fits that mold. But bottom line is, it's hard to keep guys on the field when they can't block. I know that's not a fantasy, standpoint that we take into consideration a lot, but it's just tough. And so that kind of tends to be one of the other things too, is that you just force quarterbacks. A lot of the times play callers, while yes, we have these checkdowns written in, sometimes they don't matter because my checkdown is a little swing out to the left side and my quarterback broke the pocket to the right. So your checkdown went out the window. So like you can only scheme so much to account for things like that. So it's a double-edged sword. Is it a direct correlate, or is it a direct correlation or causation? It's kind of in between. You know what I mean? It's not a direct one, but does it have something to do with it? Yes.
I just don't know what to say about this. To me, it's just draft Brian Robinson. If Eckler falls, sure. If you're hoping that you can recapture the glory that is Austin Eckler. And also, I'll say this, if you think Washington is going to be a bad team and they're going to be in hurry up forever all season, pick up Eckler. If that's what you believe, pick up Eckler because he will be on the field constantly if that's the case. But if you think Washington's going to be a decent team, we're talking about game script now. If you think Washington could actually stand to be an okay team, Brian Robinson should have plenty of work. But see, this is the fun thing, is that when Ron Rivera was calling the show, I used to be shouting at my TV because they would put Brian Robinson in, and he would just be gashing opposing defenses for 8 yards at a clip. And then they would just go away from him. And then they would ask Ron at the end, Ron, you were gashing him in the first half for 8 yards a clip. Why'd you take Brian Robinson out of the game? And he's like, oh, yeah, that one got away. Oh, that one, I didn't know that. Or, oh, that one got away from me. And I'm sitting there like, like you're such a nice man that I hate that I hate you. But it's so annoying. Whereas Kingsbury, my concern genuinely is they spend the whole season in the hurry up. And because that's what we've seen from Kingsbury before with the air raid, where they just spend the whole season in tempo offense, and that's Austin Eckler. One would think. But I don't know that. Because no one knows that. Not even Cliff Kingsbury knows it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if he did, he's not obligated to tell you the truth, as we know. So it's the most frustrating backfield in football. There it is. It's so frustrating.
You know what's not frustrating, though? It's been clarity in the wide receiver room here.
A little bit of clarity in the wide receiver room. All right, we'll do the wide receiver room. We'll go through that. That was probably the least helpful running back advice we've ever given on this show. Wasn't involving LeGarrette Blount. Terry McLaurin, still here, still selling fake doors. I love Terry McLaurin. I have, and I probably always will. We've talked for years about what would Terry McLaurin be if he had real quarterback play. Hey, maybe we'll find out here in the next year or two. So Terry McLaurin opens as the wide receiver 33. By the way, everybody was talking last year about what a brutal season Terry McLaurin had. He kind of did by Terry McLaurin standards. Still had 1,000 yards. So I think let's pump the brakes.
It's 1,000 hard yards.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize the plays that this man had to make on a regular basis just to complete pretty standard balls in coverage.
Yeah.
Where he's like stacked a corner and he has to swipe the ball over this dude's head and like pin it to his back, or do just some insane thing that if, ESPN Sports Center top 10 was still even a thing that anybody cared about, it would be all over. So it's one of those things that it's like the talent is there. You just hope that he can get somebody who can give him a catchable ball.
That, and also it's like we've seen it for years too, where it's like even before it was Sam Howell was better than some of what they had previously. I mean, 2 years ago, he got a concussion that I directly blame Taylor Heineke for.
Yeah.
It is Heineke's fault that 2 years ago Terry McLaurin suffered a concussion. Straight up.
Yeah. Hospital ball.
He threw a ball that never should have left his hand, and Terry McLaurin got a concussion because of it. Because Terry McLaurin doesn't give up. He will keep going. Like, it doesn't matter. Even if he thinks he can't catch it, he keeps running. And there is something to be said for that, from a real football standpoint. Like, he never quits. And it's like, you see him have success because of that. So, because of the brutal season last year, he opens as the wide receiver 33, 76 overall. And I'm here to tell you, I think that's a discount.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts, too.
Exactly. Also, we're also going to get into the rest of the team, because when you think you're hoping that they could get somebody who could get McLaurin some help. And based on news from literally today, yeah. So
they might have.
Mason, let's talk about real football. So what's the elephant in the room?
Well, Jahan Dotson is obviously no longer there.
Right. As of literally this morning.
As of literally this morning, he's going to be playing ball in Philly. So
good luck.
What we see is kind of an opening in the wide receiving room here. I was a little bit shocked to see this, but as you'll lead into, I don't know if you want to set up the rest of the room here.
Terry McLaurin is the only one you're going to draft. No one else has an ADP. Go ahead. There you go. Just run through it from there.
So the Vogue pick right now, or the Vogue like dart throw or newsworthy thing, is that Luke McCaffrey has been having reports out of camp that he's been.
It's a last name I've heard before.
That he's been having, a lot of success. While I love people's excitement, I think this is a little bit of name connection here and reports propping
Captain
up
narrative over there.
Right. It's a little bit of a while, yes, by all accounts, he's had a good camp. What we see when this first team offense is on the field is De'Ami Brown making plays. De'Ami Brown is the guy who's getting targeted for the
crazy, because De'Ami Brown has been with this team for years and has never done anything.
De'Ami Brown is the reason that this team was comfortable moving away from Jahan Dotson, not necessarily this great camp from Luke McCaffrey, because it's not like this team isn't in need of some targets for their new young quarterback. That's not typical when you see a young quarterback have two, where if we were talking about this show last week, we'd have been praising that, hey, this is a really solid wide receiver room with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Hey, these guys are really solid. If they can put something together, yada, yada, whoop-de-woo. But now we're talking about, whoa, surprise. Jahan Dotson is not on this team as of this morning, and De'Ami Brown is kind of why. He's the guy catching their deep balls. He's the guy catching their screens. They have been targeting him. It looks like he is going to be a factor in this offense this year, which I don't think we would have projected a month ago.
Mason, I wrote De'Ami Brown off 2 years ago.
Right.
I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, this is what, year 4 for De'Ami Brown?
I think so. Something like that.
So, because this is like the last year of his rookie deal.
Yeah.
I remember when he came into the league, there was some noise about it. And then everybody was hoping he would do something, and then he's done absolutely nothing. The entire time in his career, he's done nothing. And so the idea that suddenly we're moving on from our former first-round pick to play De'Ami Brown, I'm sorry. I hear the words you're saying, but that's a very hard sell for me. It's a hard sell, like, to get excited about De'Ami Brown here. I'm also not a big believer in Luke McCaffrey.
No.
Because I've seen it. Saw it in college. Cute last name. Let's see if you can be real. Are you a real boy, or are you Pinocchio? Because I've also heard them say some very nice things about Olamide Zaccheaus. And guess what I've seen from Olamide Zaccheaus? Some cute flashes when he was with the Falcons, and then a lot of nothing. And then him get hurt consistently. So, and they still have Jamison Crowder, who's my age. And that's closer than you'd think. So it's like, what is real? You're telling me De'Ami Brown. I believe you. If of anyone who would tell me that, I would laugh in most people's faces if they told me that. But
I'm as shocked as you are, Neil.
So I'm sitting here picking my jaw up off the floor.
I'm as shocked as you are, because I wasn't expecting it either. And when you cut on his tape in preseason week 1, and he's catching this incredible over-the-shoulder deep ball, which is one of the, like I was talking about with Jayden Daniels, one of his big assets is he's very accurate on his deep ball, and
that was the De'Ami Brown job. That's what they wanted him for when they took him years ago.
Yeah,
was to go run down the field and catch deep balls.
Yeah, he's not even going to run a huge route tree. He's literally going to catch screens for them and run, and he's going to run the deep ball, and you're just going to let him hopefully stack and throw it.
It's like MVS, but younger and more talented, because that's not a very high bar.
Right,
Like
yeah.
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating conversation I'm having.
Oh, and just for the record, I pulled this one too. You'll like this one, Neil. De'Ami Brown this preseason, 90.6 receiving grade.
That's not 9.6, right? There's not
90.
it's
90. I was as shocked as you.
That can't be real.
The deep ball
can't be
was
accurate.
very highly touted in the grading system.
PFF
No, it's because when you go back and look at all these things, he looks like a different guy. He doesn't look like the same guy. I had to do a double take. I thought I got the number wrong.
So are we going to recommend De'Ami Brown? Is that where this show is going?
We're not there yet. No,
I don't understand. Like,
he's gonna be one of these guys that when you pull out your little notes list, after you watch every episode of 32 and 32, and we talk about these guys that are going undrafted, that aren't necessarily worth your dart throw, that you could potentially get on the waiver wire later, and you put that in your little notes app on your phone. And then you go and watch.
Or you favorite them on Sleeper.
Right.
You click the little star and then you go to your little wish list.
You watch Jason on Mondays, and when Jason tells you to go jump on them, that's when you go pay attention to it. Right now, it's not that big of a deal for your draft, but it's something to note.
None of this besides Terry McLaurin is draftable. Nothing is draftable outside of Terry McLaurin. There's a lot up in the
air for this team right now.
And I still think Terry McLaurin is you're getting a 1-round discount on Terry McLaurin at 76. I think he should be going at about 66. Based on my projections for Terry McLaurin. Because they've got him basically projected for his number last year. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I saw how that went. And he had to fight and claw for every single yard. The only issue I have with Terry McLaurin this year is I still think he's going to be getting double covered. But that hasn't really hurt him too badly to this point. So I still think that's a value. That's a thing you're going to draft. None of the rest of this is draftable. So it's like, okay, that's a weird thing, man. That's a weird thing you're telling me. All right. A name to know.
Contract year, baby.
Well, no, because the one that most people immediately gravitated toward is what Jason wants to talk about, which is Luke McCaffrey, because his last name is McCaffrey. And
that's not why, though. The reason I like him is because it's Curtis Samuel. Like that. That's
how I unpack that idea for people.
I mean, again, we saw. Going back to last year, Sam Howell, Curtis Samuel, it was a safety blanket. So both rookies coming in can easily build a rapport there. I understand McLaurin's probably going to be the number one target, but
there's no problem.
They said the wide receiver too, they said has been up in the air, which again, Mason alluded to, is probably going to be De'Ami Brown, but there is so much upside for McCaffrey here that I just really enjoy him as a player. I like watching him. Think there's a lot of talent. I don't know if you guys noticed, since we're all in a dynasty league together, but I have both Jayden Daniels and Luke McCaffrey, so I was kind of on this already.
That's true. He did
See, and Jason's not like off the rails. Like, there's a lot of question marks around this roster because we are approaching preseason week 3. The games are literally playing right now.
It's happening right now on my team.
And there's trades happening. There's a lot of stuff moving around. There are questions that are going to be answered in the weeks to come. And you know what? If you're Luke McCaffrey and you're a guy that's making a name for yourself in this offense, like, there are snaps to go around. It's not like he's going to be absent from the offense. Now, just because he's not getting as many first team reps as De'Ami Brown or whatever in camp, or whatever it may be, that doesn't mean that he's not going to fit into this offense, especially since they have to figure out where they're going to replace, 450 routes run by Jahan Dotson or whatever.
Yeah,
so
it was not a small amount. He plays a lot. He
plays a lot of football. So they have to replace those routes, and they got to come somewhere.
It also explained a lot about why just last week they were saying they wouldn't name a wide receiver 2. And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
Like, that doesn't even make sense.
That was the weirdest thing ever.
It's like, Cliff, this is why no one respects you. Well, I shouldn't say no one. It's why I don't respect you. It's like, what are you even talking about, Cliff? You like, what are you even telling me? Like, your words mean nothing. And then he's gone. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. Didn't see that coming. That wasn't on my bingo card for this year.
Well, you're gonna love this because you know how much I love vacated targets. 311 now.
Oh, you're
Wide
talking about
open.
Jordan combined between Jordan Reed and
No, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dawson, Logan Thomas, and Antonio Gibson.
Logan Thomas
top,
is who I'm thinking of.
top
Thank you. Logan
5
Thomas.
receiving options, not including Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, because I was going to say, we'll just do this quickly. So that's all wide open. That's all completely wide open, and then you get into the tight ends. So the tight ends are different. You have Ben Sinot, who has no real ADP. He's tight end 24, 210 overall. Don't draft Ben Sinot. It's not a good idea.
But when you see Ertz get hurt, go pick him up.
Well, okay. Then they also have Zach Ertz. So Zach Ertz is there. Tight end 27, 231 overall. That's due to age and injury. And also because that no one knows what to do with any of this anymore. And John Bates is still there, but John Bates is there to block. So you have two different tight ends. Mason, from a real football perspective, who do you like? Anything? Nothing?
It's weird. They ran a ton. They
weird.
ran a ton of 12 personnel last year, which is 2 tight end sets. So they don't have that scheme anymore. Not quite sure what that means exactly, but if you look at potentially what they could try to fit in, is you might see opportunities where, you know, maybe they put both Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott on the field because they have receiving ability. Now, on their depth chart, their unofficial depth chart, they list Ben Sinnott behind John Bates. What does that mean? I have no idea. Not a clue. But what you do see is, like Jason alluded to, you have a guy in Zach Ertz who, by camp reports, is, you know, on a vengeance path, but that's also just traditional slow news day for Washington beat writers.
It's this time of year. It's that type of story.
So, you know, you can read into that as much or as little as you want, but what we're going to see is maybe these tight ends get more routes than they previously did, and maybe that's where Ben Sinnott fits in. It's not something we technically know right off the bat, but opportunity for a guy like Ben Sinnott, who, like you kind of just said, is being drafted ahead of Zach Ertz, frankly, as wide receiver or tight end 24, and Zach Ertz about tight end 27. I don't know that I agree with that because one of them is actually going to be on the field quite a bit more from what we should expect. So it's really tough to say. And eventually they're probably just going to vulture each other if they're both healthy. That's kind of the issue. If they really both get into some of those kooky looks,
right?
I don't know. It's something you have to talk about with Cliff.
Well, and the thing I love about this is that
Cliff doesn't take my calls. I'm blocked on his cell phone after heated discussion one day.
Now, the thing I really love about this is that it reminds me of Cardinals last year. Like, Zach Ertz, he's going to be a starting tight end until he gets hurt, and then Ben Sinnott's going to take over, and he's not going to get that job back.
Maybe, but projecting Sinnott to be Trey McBride is like not.
I watched a lot of Sinnott, so I'm kind of skewed here because in Kansas State.
Yeah. Okay. So
I've seen a lot of the talent and what he can do, and him being.
Here's what I will tell you from a non-Kansas person. Historically, rookie tight end takes a while. It takes a year or two to develop. What we've seen recently is a couple early career tight ends come into the league and actually find success. That is the exception, not the rule. You don't get Sam Laporta every time. You don't get Trey McBride every time. You get a lot more of other guys that it takes a while to grind into the league because it's a hard position to learn. You're coming out of your college years. You get no downtime. You go from playing to like a bowl game to being drafted to suddenly you're moving. And then it's like you're in with your new team. You got to learn your blocking assignments. You got to learn the route tree. You got to get your NFL body going. You got to buy a house. You got to figure out what you're going to do with your mom. You got to figure out what you're going to do with your girlfriend. You got to figure out all this other crap. It's one of the hardest positions to learn coming out of college. It's why, and also you don't have your man body yet. You're not 25. Like you're not there. You don't have your NFL nutrition worked out. You haven't worked any of this out yet. You hear this all the time from guys who, even like other positions, about what it takes to transition from college to the NFL. And in tight end, it's even harder because you have to learn how to block and you have to learn how to run routes. It's really hard.
Well, and
So
you're trying to, in the other big thing you did allude to it, is the NFL body type of thing, and why it's difficult for tight ends is because it's hard to get on the field if you're at a disadvantage blocking.
Yeah.
If you're at a size disadvantage, because guys get bigger. Guys get bigger when you move to the next level. And while you might have been a semi-efficient blocker at the collegiate level, it takes time to transition to being an effective blocker at the pro level, and that takes size, that takes reps, and that's why it takes time to transition. While Ben Sinnott was a decent blocker, it wasn't necessarily his highlight. His big point is that he's definitely going to be able to run some routes for this team, though.
He will run some routes, but the issue is going to be, can he outplay late career Zach Ertz to earn that? Right. And if Zach Ertz gets hurt, sure. Okay, then sure. They're not going to have a lot of other options. So they'll do it because you might as well get him the reps at that point. You drafted him. You might as well. That'll be the decision that gets made. But the problem is that I'm not ready to sit here and tell you to go into your draft taking Benson. You want to talk about dynasty? It's a different thing.
Also,
sure.
Dynasty.
Yeah, in dynasty, I don't really have a problem with it. But if you're talking about in redraft for this year, where you're expecting him to contribute for you meaningfully, well, here's the reality of it. You could draft him if you want, but you're probably going to need the roster spot at some point. You're probably going to cut him. So it's not worth it. Just let it go. And then we'll talk about this on Monday at some point on a waiver wire show. And that's what's real. Like, I've seen the hype train for this. And I see people like, oh, it's the next Trey McBride, Sam Laporta. And I'm like, you people are so spoiled. You haven't wandered through the. I can tell the people that are giving these
tight
takes,
end desert.
Yeah, I can tell these people that are giving these takes haven't wandered through the tight end desert for a decade like I have. Like I can just tell. I know who you are. Like you're dating yourself. You're telling me that you're probably in your early 20s because you haven't wandered through the desert. You got to go suffer a little bit and get fooled by the fool's gold of the Evan Ingrams of the world, where they flash and then fail and then you get burned, and like you can't fall into this, because prior to the Trey McBrides and Sam Laportas and various other people, there were a lot of people that talked about this and they wanted everybody to be Gronk, and it's like even Gronk struggled early career. Like it's just the way that it is for more often than not. Is that the rookie tight end comes in, it takes 2 or 3 years for them to really grow into being who they're going to be. And then you have that window of about 5 to 7 years where they're really, really good. And then they're gone. That's why you have the outliers like Kelsey, who's been that good for that long. He's 35. Like, that's not normal. Like, that's not a normal thing that you're talking about. And then it's the same thing on the other end, where you have the Sam Laportas of the world and people like that, where it's like, look how good he is. It's like, yeah, but that's like such a crazy outlier that asking other people to do that is just really not fair. And you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment in a real world. Like, honestly, Trey McBride showed a lot last year. Really wouldn't shock me if Trey McBride went in the tank this year. Because you want to know what that would take? Get whacked in the hamstring or in the knee a little bit. And then see how you play through that when you still got to go out there and block. And you're limping. Let's see how that goes for you. Because, like, I'm not even saying that I think he's bad. I'm just stating for the record why tight end is so frustrating. And why, if I had my way about it, we wouldn't play tight end at all. We would fold tight end into wide receiver. And we wouldn't even play a dedicated tight end position.
Taysom Hill. Oh, no.
No. No. And I would list Taysom Hill at wide receiver too, if I was going to do that. Like, or I'd list him at running back. Like something like that. Like, because he's nothing. He's a weird one where it's like he's the weirdest one because he doesn't really play a set position.
The fact he keeps making the roster even after the emergency quarterback rule came up doesn't make. I don't understand.
It's because they keep.
I don't know.
Owing him that money. It's because they owe him all that money.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean Payton. Like, it's because they owe him all that money. One more year, and then I get ready for it, Mason. One more year, and then get ready. because you know what happens after that when he becomes a free agent. You know what happens.
Oh,
Get ready. Buckle up. I hope he likes wearing orange. I hope he likes wearing orange and navy, because you know in your heart, search your feelings. You know it to be true.
Why'd you have to say that?
Because you know I'm right. The only reason it didn't happen sooner is because he's still got that huge contract and Denver couldn't afford it. The minute that contract is off the table, no one's going to want him. And Sean Payton's going to be like, come home, my brother. Come home.
I swear to God, if I see him at the grocery store, man.
Join your brother, Adam Troutman. Join your other brother,
man.
little Jordan Humphrey. Join us here in Denver. We will see you at Mod Market.
Oh, my God.
On the corner of Arapahoe and Yosemite.
Oh.
He's only mad because he knows I'm right.
Yeah, let's wrap up this show before I get any more.
I was like, after I've ruined Mason's entire day.
My whole night ruined.
Yep. Mason's whole day has been ruined and my mission has been accomplished. There it is, folks. We did it. We got there. So for one last time, tune in on the 31st for the wrap-up show. We look forward to having you. Sorry that it couldn't be a live stream, but schedules just would not permit that with football season getting ready. Jason and I are getting ready to start doing the in-season schedule, which is insane. Mason is slammed with PFF. So is Mike Berlin. Like, everybody's just slammed. So we're going to do a pre-record. And that also enables us really to do the conversation around Sleeper. Because if you haven't seen the new rule changes, tune in for that. We'll give you our thoughts on that. And also, one last, if you haven't played on Sleeper, think about it. Again, not
This
a sponsor.
is your year.
Not a sponsor, just people we think are cool. Like, they do good work. And we like to shout out people that are doing good work. So we've moved a lot of our leagues to it. So practice what you preach. Like, and I've moved some leagues that have been playing since 2005. There, I said.
He didn't want to date himself.
I already have too many times. It's fine. So there you go. And yeah. And with that, I have to go apply Bengay to my joints and go get ready for the early bird special. So we're going to go do that. But until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!